Women, what's something men say that they think is okay, but is actually creepy as hell? Story 1. When working in retail, and you can't say anything rude to customers. Old men like to say wild things like, "You look like one of those uptight librarian or teacher types in an 80s music video, who rips off her glasses and lets her hair down and dances on a car," while you're just trying to tell them the total for their purchase. I used to work opening shift at a McDonald's. When I was about 18, there would be old men waiting to come in before we opened, for their cup of coffee, and to hang out. They are nice, and I would talk to them when I wasn't busy. Then, one day, one of them told me he would bend me over his knee and spank me. Sir, no. Old people say weird shit sometimes. Unrelated to predatory advances on women. I'm a guy, but when I worked in food service, I once had an old guy pull a little knife out of his pocket and tell me, "If you were my son, I'd cut those right off of you." My tattoos. Yikes. Someone come get their grandpa. Correction. When working in retail, you can't start a conversation saying anything rude to a customer. If the customer is rude to you, then you should definitely don't hold back. If this is a company policy, then it's a shitty company. The best comeback to a rude customer is when you can be smarter than them and give them a clever, rude response, wrapped in some overly kind tone. That way you hold the upper ground and signal to the other customers that you are handling a situation, not causing it. Rude customers are always unintelligent, so it shouldn't be that hard to be smarter. Story 2. I was trying to sell something on Marketplace, and he messaged me and said, "Do you come with it? Thank you for being creepy before I gave you my address for pickup, sir." You know what? No man ever attempted to flirt with me more than when I was a 16-year-old cashier. I'm talking older men, like even some like 40s and 50s. One like 30-year-old asked me how much I would be if they scanned me. I blushed so hard out of humiliation, and he took it as compliment to him. So gross. I used to work at a Walmart when I was younger, and the stories the female cashiers would tell me of creepy dudes hitting on them all day were both hilarious and disturbing. My secondary job at that place was as a fake boyfriend, and to walk them to their car at night. Sometimes dudes would stick around hours until they clocked out. Thank you for taking on that secondary job. Ducking creeps hanging out in the parking lot. Jesus Christ. I was able to cope with that type of shit in my youth. But it's so ducking gross and terrifying for young women working retail or food service to deal with. Like, yeah, if you hang out to harass me after I get off work, then I'm totally gonna go along with it. Predatory jassholes. My daughter works retail, and the store policy is no one leaves at the end of the night until everyone is ready to walk out the door. Then they do it as a group, and no one leaves until everyone is in their car and it has started. I think this is a great policy. I have a similar story, helping a buddy of mine sell the gifts he purchased for his then recent ex-GF on my Marketplace account. So, he didn't have to make one. One of the items was really nice. Brand new Victoria's Secret thong. One creeper asked me to model it for him with a winky face. I guess he saw my name. So, my buddy put them on over a pair of basketball shorts, and did suggestive poses in them, and sent it to the guy. He replied with a thumbs up, and blocked me. Story 3. I'll tell a story about when I was unintentionally creepy. I was at a conference and met up with a new co-worker. Walking out of the conference, I asked where she was staying. Not because I had any intention of flirting, but because I'm awkward, and had nothing else to say, and wanted to talk about my cool Airbnb. I think she got uncomfortable and said, "My husband and I are staying at that hotel." I felt like she was trying to make it clear that she's married and not interested. Which is fair, I am too. We're good friends now, and had some pretty chill conversations the next day. Probably because she later learned I'm married and expecting. I don't know, but I still cringe about it. Note to self, don't ask women about their living situation when it's expected that they're alone. This reminds me of the time I was waiting tables, and this lady ordered the ribs. When her food was ready, I brought it to her, and it was the largest plate of ribs I'd ever seen. So I set it down, and my awkward bass says, "I haven't seen a rack that big since I've worked here." The table was eerily silent after that. and even after I asked if they needed anything else. It wasn't until I got back to the kitchen when I realized that the plate was in the same general angle and direction as her chest, which was fairly exposed as she was dressed nicely for her date. So, it must have also looked like I was staring at her mangoes. I felt so embarrassed. I asked a co-worker if she could take the table from me to spare the poor woman. She had to stop laughing before she could go check on them and sort of explain the situation and set things right. But man, did I feel bad. Story 4. When I was pregnant, there was regular customer at the restaurant I worked at who would always tell me he knew I wished it was his baby. Creepy. And also no, sir. What the absolute duck? Where do these statements even come from? Dude had a lot of inner demons he was battling. One of those people who was so kind and polite sober, and then became a creepy Burke when intoxicated. One would think that would make people avoid getting intoxicated. Or maybe these people never realize. When my son, first and only child, was born, and they had just wheeled my wife into our hospital room from her C-section, and I was holding our newborn child, our friend's husband swaggered in and blurted out, "The real father has arrived." Unfortunately, this was also captured on the first videos of the event. I get the humor, and I'm a smartass to the moon, but nobody thought it was funny. Least of all me. Story 5. I like a challenge. I know it can be flirty. However, it's usually said by the guy who isn't accepting that you've turned him down. Now it comes off as predatory. And then we have my friends where she would turn him down 2 to 3 times a year, for a couple years in a row, until she gave in, and now they are married. And they talk about it like it was cute. Duck that. You turned me down once, and I'm moving on. I had a girl who did that with me, and I just accepted it and moved on like a normal human. She asked me straight out like a year later if I was interested, and I was like, well, I was a year ago. But now I am with someone that doesn't play weird games. It seems like a method that is designed specifically to select for Burks, which is pretty consistent with how things went for her. My older cousin got married when I was a preteen, and I remember my mom saying that she had gotten this great guy to marry her because she played the game right and kept him always wanting more. Even then, I was horrified by the idea that you were supposed to trick someone into marrying you by being fake or distant. They divorced so quickly it was unbelievable. Stupid romantic movies don't help either. The so-called romantic lead keeps pursuing the girl in the movie in different ways, until she says yes. Most romantic novels are the same. I was watching Modern Family the other day, and Phil said these exact words. You should know when a woman said no. She actually means yes. Duck with that. If I say no, it means no. Story 6. I liked the perfume a girl at work was wearing, and wanted to buy some for my wife. I could not figure out a way to ask her what it was, without sounding like I wanted my wife to smell like her. I still don't know what product, and I guess I never will. I had a guy ask me what I was wearing. Flat out told me he loved it, and I smelled good. Asked me what it was called, because he was gonna buy it for his wife. I didn't have a problem with it. I was actually flattered. Intention shines in moments like this. Sometimes you'll come across a person that'll take it the wrong way, but not the majority of women. What perfume you wearing? I've got a doll. Well, more like a pillow. That would be bitchin' if it smelled like you too.